Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I would like to call to order the Wednesday, September 4th SFO Airport Community Roundtable Technical Working Group at 3:30 p.m. We are meeting in person at the Foster City Council Chambers Conference Room and virtually via Zoom. And joining us today are staff to the Roundtable, Kathleen Wentworth, Roundtable Coordinator, Diane Estepona, Administrative Secretary to the Roundtable, Eugene Rindell, HMMH Technical Consultant to the Roundtable, and Jason Stoddard, Airspace Analyst, HMMH, via Zoom. I'm assuming Jason is. And with us here also, Bert Ganong, SFO Airport Noise Office Manager. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen or Diane to tell us who else might be with us online.
Are the other people are members of the public?
Yes, only members.
So we'll be talking with them as the meeting progresses.
Okay, wonderful. With that, then let's go ahead and move on to roll call, please. Chair
Sam Hindi,
Present.
Member Terry O'Connell,
Present.
Member Judah Pasco, Member Kiara Egan,
Present.
and Member Al Royce. So you actually have one.
Okay, wonderful. So before going to the agenda, I would like to read and announce the land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestor homeland of the Remitash Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Remitash Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibility as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territories. As guests, I recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. I wish to pay my respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Remitash community, past, present, and future, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Thank you so much for allowing me to do so. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next item, which is public comments for items that are not on the agenda. This is a time for members of the public who would like to talk about an item that is not on the agenda this afternoon. And staff will note any written comments which have been received and will allow members of the public to speak on items not on the agenda, as I said. Members of the public who are present and have turned in speaker slips will be heard first, followed by those members of the public who are joining remotely. Mr. Estepona will explain how the public can participate in today's meeting. Diane?
Thank you. For those attending the meeting on Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period and for each item on the regular agenda, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raised hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Please note that members of the public must wait for the prompt in connection with each agenda item before using the raise hand function. And we have one member of the public that wishes to speak.
Okay, and just for the record, nobody here on the chamber, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the Zoom.
Okay. We have member Tom Shannon. Tom, you will have 2 minutes. Please wait till I start the timer.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hey, good afternoon. I don't know if I'm on your agenda. I want to talk about jet noise over Los Altos, Palo Alto, and East Palo Alto. Is that on the agenda, or should I make my public comments now?
Hey, go ahead. I mean, let's go ahead. We could take your comments now.
Okay, I want to just ask the committee what's going on. We've had continuous jet traffic over Los Altos, Palo Alto, and East Palo Alto. In the last 2 weeks, it's actually exacerbated. Many of us live near the side-by intercept, which means we get all the negative impacts on SFO's landing patterns. For the record, GBAS has created some serious health risks to us, namely lack of sleep, constantly being awakened at night, unable to keep windows open, and unable to have the quiet enjoyment of our patios and backyards. Jets fly at low altitudes, and at times there's one every 7 minutes. The last 2 Fridays, I've calculated that over 50 flights have flown over our houses between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. Try having an enjoyable outdoor dinner or conversation with that kind of traffic. The surfer landing pattern has no dispersion. I'm a private pilot and know the FAA and ATC could easily disperse these flights over a much larger area. They could create a multitude of intercepts to share the burdens with San Mateo County. For now, every flight seems to fly the same pattern over our houses. The crosswind legs for flights coming from the north all turn and fly the crosswind pattern directly over Palo Alto. You can view and track these flights from any open space down here. When SFO Roundtable is going, when is SFO Roundtable going to attend to the negative impacts? GBAS impacts over 1 million residents in the South Bay, and yet this committee seems to deny representation to these cities. Okay, thank you. San Francisco, one last statement. San Francisco is 18 miles from Palo Alto. As a private pilot, it does not take 18 miles to land a plane on 28 runways. The jets could fly at 10,000 feet and you still could comfortably land at SFO. In closing, please work with us on GBAS and help eliminate jet noise over the South Bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There are no other public comments.
Thank you so much, Diane. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close public comments for items that are not on the agenda. And then moving on to item number 1 on our agenda today, it's the introduction to select nighttime flight procedures and flight tracks, SFO stick departures, and SFO runways 28 left and 28 right approaches. This agenda item covers 2 very different SFO flight procedures. One, a departure, and one, an approach to landing. And flight noise from 8 procedures impact our communities during the nighttime hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. For the night stick departure, it appears that some of the nighttime flights, which are assigned to fly the stick departure, they seem to start out flying the path of the published stick path right after takeoff. But then, for some reason, they seem to make a left turn away from the published stick departure, flying a line straight down the spine of the peninsula, which obviously create a lot of noise for our residents at nighttime. The approaches to runway 28 left and 28 right are a bit more complex. The decision of which of the existing published approaches to use to land on runway 28 left and 28 right is based on many factors such as weather, assigned flight procedures, airplane traffic, and other factors. But at night, when traffic decreases, there are more opportunities for flight to fly an offset approach path farther away from the peninsula, farther from East San Mateo, Foster City, and Redwood Shores, which could decrease nighttime aircraft noise for our residents. Today, we're just about to take an initial look at each of these 2 procedures in order to understand the issues and discuss possible steps leading to improvements. Many thanks to SFO Airport Noise Office Manager Bert Ganong, who at the request of the Roundtable has provided extensive data to our consultant, Gene Reindel. We'll start this discussion today with some introductory graphics and comments from Roundtable Coordinator Kathleen Wentworth. Then Mr. Ganong will make a brief presentation explaining how this data was collected and show us the tools he uses. And after that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Reindel and Mr. Studdard from HMMH will present their initial analysis of the data received. This initial analysis will be just the first step in formulating next steps, as we will discuss after the presentation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kathleen. Kathleen, thank you for the work you have done. I'm looking forward to see what you have for us.
Well, I wanted to start out with quite a bit of background because we have to understand what the expectation is for these airplanes to be doing before we can understand what they're doing that's not meeting expectations. So I'm going to I was hoping to. There we go. So we'll start out by talking about 2 it left and 2 it right approaches. Now, I know we all know that 28 left and the 28 right are the primary approaches to land in San Francisco for the west flow. That's what, 95% of the time plus?
Roughly 95%.
95%. So these are good procedures to take a look at because they impact us for a great portion of the calendar year. Basically, when it's, as long as it's not raining out, we generally get these kinds of winds that favor landing on these runways. And so if we take a look at the way the arrivals come in from different areas, you can see the typical, these are all arrivals coming into San Francisco from the north down at the Bodega, 2 options, from the west, from the Oceanic Pirate, from the South Surfer, and from the east, we have the Diamond arrivals. And each of these has to be merged and sequenced by the air traffic controllers, and so that they can make a nice little kind of soldiers in a line, right, going up the bay towards runways 28 left and 28 right. So that takes quite a bit of technique on their part. Now, getting into the 28 left and 28 right, this is an image of actual flight paths. And as you can see, looking at the runway at the upper left-hand corner of your screen, and the airplanes are coming from the lower right-hand side up to the upper left. You've got 2 kind of narrowly parallel paths, really close together, close to the land, and then you've got an offset path off to the sort of the right of that. And so the 2 very straight parallel paths are the 2 ILS systems, and that's just a term for an instrument landing system. Just so we know, when the weather is low visibility or low ceilings, aircraft are going to need to use the ILS system. Generally speaking, there's a couple of other options, but depending on how low the visibility is, you're going to have to use the ILS systems to get to the airport. Now, the other offset one uses different techniques to get to the runway, different navigation techniques, one of which is visual. If it's a beautiful day out there, they could fly a couple of versions of visual approaches. And if it's not visual, there's still an instrument landing approach that is capable of, it's called RNAV, satellite, let's call it a satellite-based approach that would lead us to use the offset, but we could use that. And needless to say, the offset runways are going to be further offset from land, which is a good thing. So the question here is, in situations where we have the weather that's good weather, it's not low ceilings, low visibilities, how can we get more people flying the offsets? So we take a look, first of all, I should go back a moment. We've got 28 left and 28 right, which correspond to the 2 runways here at the airport. And generally speaking, during the daytime hours of San Francisco, for most hours of the day, San Francisco, as we know, will be landing 2 airplanes pretty much side by side, going into 1 to 28 left and 1 to 28 right. They're not exactly side by sides, but they're very close to it. We're looking only to look at nighttime flights now, and the nighttime, there are plenty of opportunities to have single approaches to 28 using 28 right. Now, ILS 28 right is not really far from land, but it's slightly better than 28 left. And so it's a good thing for the air traffic controllers who have indicated that they would be able to use 28 right for certain nighttime conditions. And as a matter of fact, we get a kind of a score on that each month, and we get the San Francisco Airport Directors Report. Because if you're looking down at the lower right-hand corner of your screen, in that red box, it tells us about what percentage of airplanes are using 28 left versus 28 right. And then furthermore, this is just ideal information. We have the information broken down for nighttime. So we see that at nighttime, air traffic control does a good job of making better use of 28 right. We're using it 83% of the time. So we might want to take a look at what that 17% represents. And if there's a way that that can be also increased as we go through here. But there's definitely an increase in utilization of two-way right during the nighttime hours, for which we thank ATC. So here's an example of a flight path that an aircraft who is scheduled here to land on 28 right. And I'm just showing you this because, just to show you that 28 right is not really quiet. It might be a little bit better than 28 left, but this is not a great solution to the noise along the bay. So this airplane flew along, and as you can see up now, I don't know if you can read this little green square here, screen circle, but it says 33 in it. And that's one of Bert's noise monitors at Foster City. And Bert, you'd say 33 is pretty quiet, right?
Most definitely.
So this airplane is coming over a very quiet little community of Foster City. And then I just captured the other picture when it came over that noise monitor. And you probably can't see it, but I was able to figure it out. It was 71 decibels. And 71 with your window open, I think you would not be a happy camper. So even using 2-8 right is not a total solution. It's great, and it's better than 2-8 left, but we've got to look at seeing if we can improve on this even more.
Well, keep in mind, Kathleen, that the runways are 750 feet apart from center line to center line.
No kidding.
And so if we're talking a 2-8 left versus a 2-8 right coming by Foster City, the difference is only going to be 750 feet.
Yeah, but yeah, take what you can get, but it ain't much.
No, it's slim.
Yes, yeah, I should say, yes, let's do questions because
So-
that's what we're here.
What is the difference? 33 was good and 78 was bad. What is
71.
71? What is-
33 is without the airplane.
Yeah.
Is how much ambient
Okay, that
noise.
is, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry,
that's
thank
ambient noise and that's airplane noise. Thank you.
Mhm.
And a pretty significant number change. I mean, you know, it's pretty significant. And yes, please, let's make it more of a discussion. I'm just running through because I know this is kind of boring stuff.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, so just to make a point that 2-8 right is not a total answer. We need to do better. So going back to this, how we're going to do better? Offset approaches. And we have, these are the examples of offset approaches we have currently at San Francisco. I don't know if you've got all of them, but there's one on the far left is a visual approach. And I don't know, Bert, do they use that much anymore? I don't see it much.
No, it's used to some degree. The FMS bridge is the most preferred.
Yeah, this one with the nice color picture is very commonly used. It was pioneered by United way long ago.
Mhm.
And it's again a visual approach, but it has more guidelines for crossing it at certain altitudes and certain certain points that are visible on your screen on your aircraft, so that you can make sure you're going exactly on this path. And this is a satellite. It uses satellite locations.
And that's increasing in popularity, the RMP RNAV Yankee.
And yeah, I was going to ask about that because at one point it was a United only flight.
The FMS bridge, yes.
Yeah.
But the RMP RNAV Yankee is the one that
That's the next
is-
one we're talking
it's a
about.
public, yes.
Yes.
And it's further out over the bay. So that's the one
Yeah, it's great.
we're really looking forward to.
So what do you think? How much, getting more usage, what does that translate to?
I believe we'll have to wait for Gene and Jason's numbers
Oh,
on
okay.
that. But I don't know the
We're
exact
seeing
number.
it more.
We're seeing it more.
Okay, and that's good to know.
So may I ask a question?
Hmm.
So FMS was the United own approach, if you will, or
They
design?
paid to have
They
that
paid to have
approach
that, they
set up, but they also are sharing it
Sharing it with.
quite widely.
Now they're sharing, at first they had like real restrictions on it. I don't know if it was money changing hands. I don't know what
Well,
it was.
yeah, mainly because they paid to have it done and they had the liability.
But now I understand it's getting a broader, it's offered. And I think Jason mentions that in his presentation, so we'll probably come back to that in a little bit. But that's a great visual. And as Bert mentioned, the next one along the line, the RNP Yankee, Yankee just means Y.
Phonetically,
Yeah,
sorry.
phonetically, we all say Yankee, but you're just looking, it says RNAV, RNP, Y the runway 28, right? So this requires,
I got one more question.
back to this,
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
okay, good.
Is there any like technical or equipment restriction that prohibit an airline if they want to use this approach not to be able, I know the weather will be
Right.
something that
No.
will not, but is there any special equipment that's needed other than
The
visual?
RNP, RNAV
No,
is
no,
basically.
you mean the
The
FMS,
FMS.
back to the
No,
FMS. That's, you need to have satellite-based technology, but everybody's got that.
GPS.
That's it, and they want to
Yeah.
be willing to take it. Okay.
So, but the thing is that in order to really fly this using your technology, you've got to have it uploaded to your box, to your computer on board, so that it just populates. So you've got a screen that looks very much like this colored thing, and then you just go from point A to point B along the way. So it's important that you have access to an official copy of this. So you couldn't take this piece of paper. I mean, you guess you could maybe make your own swag, but
Not recommended.
yeah, so basically, you need to get a copy of this. I mean, you need to get an official access to it, so it can be uploaded into your computer things. And I think that's what we're gonna talk about, because I think that's one of the things we need to find out is this freely available now to other airlines? And if so, we're gonna find out who's taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And who's not. And Diane, can I ask you to start kind of keeping notes about things we just wanna discuss? And so this would be, just bridge visual and, free access.
Also, so FMS stands for Flight Management System.
Mhm.
And so they designed it to go into flight management system. So that's what's required.
That's the
They have
computer,
it.
yeah.
And all aircraft flying into SFO have a flight management system.
The question is, do they have it downloaded or?
And that's the piece you don't know,
Yeah.
because they would have to.
Got it.
We can't guarantee that they have gone to get it and put it in their FMS.
But there ought to be a way to find that out, because certainly when you are coming in here on a flight, air traffic control will clear via the FMS bridge visual. Well, they know to give that to any United airplane, but do they know to give it to the other one? So there's somebody out there that knows the answer to this, and we may have to find that out. But that's what we're talking about here, is different things we might be able to do to enhance that. So going to the next one over, the RNAV, RNP, this is a satellite-based technology, but the RNP has additional requirements on it that not every airplane and every crew member would necessarily qualify for.
Correct.
Your big airline, United, will have it, American, Delta, I'm sure. I don't know that for a fact, but I can't imagine that they.
Could be
all-
aircraft dependent also.
Yeah, but they have to have aircraft and training, like
Correct.
the equipment and the training, pilot training. So these are not big deals, but for some companies, they just may not have taken the time and invested the money in their training to access this kind of technology. It's freely available. It's the FAA technology. It's not like the other one we talked about, but so we need to also find out from them, perhaps, do a survey, little email survey to the airlines that service San Francisco, and find out what percentage of their airplanes and air crew are certified to fly RMPs.
The one Bert was referring to, that's even further into that.
We can talk with our consultant, Paul,
Mhm.
with Link Corporation.
Paul Hanger.
So Paul may.
I'm almost certain it's 98% or higher now. It's not like it was 15 years ago.
So that would be,
Doing 5 years ago.
could we
Yeah.
task you with putting that on your list?
We'll start that for.
So the difference between the RNAV, the RNP, and the visual, the FMS,
Mhm.
what kind of sound difference or how much of an offset is that? It's hard to tell from this to me.
I don't think I have a picture. Jason, do you have a picture of
Yes.
that? in
Yep, so I
presentation?
have a slide that I'll show in my presentation. That'll give you
Okay,
an
great.
idea.
Great.
Okay, great. And then there's a fourth kind of procedure on the far right, which doesn't totally exist yet, but there's a lot of opportunity for the future and the GBAS innovative approaches to do GBAS offset. And we have a couple that have been recommended from the Roundtable to the GBAS team, which is And
And it's in design, right?
it's in design, it's in the.
It's in that.
It's in the IFB gateway, yeah. So
Installed.
yeah,
Yes,
so, but this is, what, 2-3 years down the road at best?
right,
To be flying it
At best.
at
at
best.
best. Okay, I'm not,
As Bert just said, it has been installed, I guess.
so there are options to these offset approaches, which can be,
They're able to do them today. The offset approach.
the ones that are depicted up
Right.
here are existing today. As we talked about, the middle one is somewhat maybe limited in breadth of applicability, and the other maybe is only somewhat limited by those companies that don't have RNP capabilities.
So this could reduce noise to the close-in communities, Foster City, and how far back would implementing these help communities with noise? Would it go as far as East Palo Alto on
So
adding some help?
I don't think so. Well,
Not really, mainly
No.
because that is fed by the Diamond.
That's fed by the Diamond, the
East of
southern,
the Diamond.
and the
eastern.
surfer,
Some, more so Diamond.
oh, well, Diamond is almost all true, right?
But to offset it more, because the things that are coming over East Palo Alto and Palo Alto are the surfer and the pirate.
And then-
Okay,
yeah.
so we'll get to that later.
Well, yeah, yeah,
If, yeah.
that's a good question. Come back to it.
I think to your question, if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. Redwood Shores
Yes.
and East Cemetery
Cemetery.
and Foster City would probably.
Those are the definite beneficiaries. Yes.
Yeah. And as you
East-
move on
East
shore
Palo
from there,
Alto.
it's gonna be less and less.
Yeah, but you would see East Palo Alto and some. element of-
There might be. I mean, it depends how
Right.
early on they intercept the 2-8
Sure.
glide slope, localizer.
Mhm.
But yeah, there'd be some potential for,
But it's not gonna change their path to that offset. That's what
no,
I'm saying, like on the pirate and on
No,
no,
the noise from those aren't changing. What we're doing is asking them to move offshore.
but
to
what,
offset the-
but that's what the GBAS we're looking at, is the ability to hit those areas, East Palo Alto, at a higher altitude and go
Right.
further out into the bay and just trying to respond to that.
That one,
The
the
follow-
GBAS
yeah.
procedure, yeah,
Yeah, so that GBAS procedure
could have that.
could have some benefits to it. Yeah. But that's sort of like in a box on its own, because it's
Mhm.
nothing we can do about that now, the GBAS part of it. But whether we want to take any action to take a look at further.
So is all the GBAS programs being stalled right at this moment?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
Okay, so that kind of gives us an idea of where we might want to go with conversations later on. And let's see. Okay. And so if there's any more questions on 2-8, this is just the general introduction. We're going to go talk about the state departure. And then when I get through my little overview, then Jason from HMMH will do a lot more stuff, and then we can have it.
Okay.
Okay, so, changing gears here. We're going to talk about departure from, that was our arrival. So we're going to talk about departure generally from runway 1 left, takes off and goes around and makes a circle off to the left. I'm sorry. I wanted to buy one of those fancy things. But at any rate, takes off from 1 left generally. And makes it an arc left. Now, what we're going to talk about is not going to help this thing.
I know.
Just thought I'd be upfront with that. But we're going to talk about this a little bit. So on the left is just, this is off of the SFO fly track.
sorry.
What's your software called? Flight track?
Shoreline.
ANOMS?
No. Where the
Oh, web track.
web track, thank you, web track. So web track displays when selected different paths, different flight procedures. This is a published flight procedure for the stick departure. This is generally used for aircraft taking off from one left. And it is generally designed for airplanes who are destined to be landing to the south or the southeast. And it seems like it's a little circuitous, and that is correct because the bay gets filled up with other aircraft doing other things. So they sort of designed this to do that. But anyway, so that's the path with the little blue arrows that take it down to this yellow box called port intersection, port waypoint. And it's right down by the Half Moon Bay. So give you some idea of where that is. It's a little off the screen here, I'm sorry. So that's the depicted pathway for it. So then the one picture on the right is just a picture who's flying the correct procedure. This aircraft, as you can see from the airport here, took off on one left, went out just a little bit, and then they start their left turn. And this one pretty much stayed within the pattern and flew down to port intersection. And then in the next picture, that's the same airplane, it took off down the port intersection, and then they go on to a transition to wherever they're going to. LA, Santa Barbara, not Santa Barbara, LA. No, actually not. They go offshore, guys. So I said, anyway, they go down to say LA and places like that. So that's what you expect to see. So here's a picture of its departure, and you can see that they took off on that kind of left, straight out little path for a little bit, and they started the left turn and they stayed there, and they started to follow the path, and then they were changed it. They didn't do the rest of it down to port, but instead they started a straight line right down the San Mateo County Peninsula. And this was at 5:30 in the morning. And so these people underneath this path got this overhead at 5:30 in the morning. And this is an airplane that's climbing at climb power, something just shy of full power, and are climbing up to go on their way. I think I have a couple more illustrations of this. So the question is, why are they doing that? And especially, why are they doing that at 5:30 in the morning? Next one is a different day. This one is at 10:50 at night. And again, just an example of taking off on the left, circling around, starting to stick, but then changing the pathway into straight down the peninsula. And this is that last flight, but it's a different way to depict it through flight radar. I think this one is. And this shows, it's kind of nice because it shows the dotted pathway is the filed flight plan. That's what the stick departure is supposed to be. That's what they're supposed to be flying. And instead they take off, and then the green path is that straight line down the peninsula. So you can see it's efficient for the airplane, cuts off some, flight time from some miles and there. And that's just, it's doing what it's doing, and we don't know why.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So for members of the public who are listening and, they really don't know, who is it that determines not to fly the path and take that shortcut? Because clearly this is a shortcut, all it is. But the impact is going over residential at odd hours of the morning and the night.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the pilot decision? Is that the FAA decision, the control, and who's making that?
It's one or the other or both.
Yeah, so here's the way it works. The flight plan is filed by the airline, and the air traffic controllers assign that flight plan, that path, stick path, to the pilot. The pilot gets it in the little computer in their flight deck, and they acknowledge that this is what they're going to do. And then they're cleared for takeoff, and they're given an initial heading and text. So all's well and good. Everybody's doing that. And then at some point, you've got a couple of things that can happen. Air traffic control may need to vector this airplane for its own significant reasons. Vectoring is not, unlike a lot of people misunderstand, vectoring is not in and of itself a good or a bad thing. It's a neutral tool that the air traffic controllers have.
Yes.
And this tool can be used for good or for less good. situations. So we need to, know that the air traffic controllers have the authority to vector airplanes. That also, and that can be for any number of reasons. They could vector to keep you away from weather. They could vector to keep you away from another airplane that's conflicting with you or potentially conflicting with you. They could do it to allow another airplane to get above you, below you, whatever, traffic management. Pilots can ask for a shortcut. Most pilots would not ask for a shortcut in this kind of urban, dense area. You might do it at 30,000 feet over Omaha, but you wouldn't generally ask for a shortcut.
It's a busy time in the cockpit too.
Yeah, well,
Right.
but you're allowed to talk to ATC, but it is.
You
busy.
are, but you're
But this is-
CNBC.
It's not a typical thing for the pilot at this
Right.
point in the flight to ask.
I would
for a
agree that
shortcut.
because it would come from ATC more than it would come from the pilot. As Bert said, it's a busy time in the cockpit. Last thing you want to do is
Yeah.
divert from your
And
procedure.
ATC is
That's your
for
Air traffic control.
Air traffic control.
Thank you.
So the air traffic controller, and I could say, to finish the last thing, is that the pilot can make a request of air traffic control at any time they choose, for any reason that makes sense. And air traffic control basically can say unable. That's their answer to a request, unable. Now, if you have a request that's urgent, then you're in a different situation and they will work with you and they will do whatever. So even if the pilot were to request this, they could say unable, fly the procedure. And so where was I at?
Sorry.
So anyway, so air traffic control is running the show at this point. And I don't think have any rules about when they can vector. I think it's left to their judgment. We may need to invite an air traffic control representative here for our next air traffic control meeting, for our next TWG meeting. That might be a good thing to do, to get some perspective on it, because as I say, vectoring is not a bad thing. It's just a thing, and it can be used as is appropriate. And we're just questioning the appropriateness of this under these circumstances, just questioning. So air traffic control is making the ultimate decision on this. Sort of an emergency, they are running the show. And I just love this picture because it just showed three of them on one day and what at one time, and around 6 o'clock in the morning, actually. And those three flights after, it's hard to tell, but that was these are the same group. There's three flights up here, and they all went in a straight line on their shortcut. Okay.
Pretty consistent.
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, I would like to see that with. I would love to see this with the transitions overlay on it, just to see. But I don't have that capability. But anyway, very interesting how they, And I just wanted to show this slide. These are actual flight tracks that the FAA provided us. Thanks to the FAA. We appreciate that. And as you can see, the heavy dark green shows most people overwhelmingly fly the procedure. Just hugely numbers. And other people fly and kind of veer off at some point, not perfectly, but they don't. But then there's a little group here, if you can see, right along the bay, right along, the peninsula. There is a lot of straight lines showing flight tracks that are not following the stick. So that's what we're looking for in this data set. That we're looking for is who are these flights that are going straight down the peninsula, and why, and what can we do about it?
Well, and the tighter they make that turn, when they first make their initial turn, the more it affects Brisbane. And they're trying to clear San Bruno Mountain within that turn, because if they
Right.
make a nice gentle turn, they're going on the contours of the mountain. And of course, that means that they're affecting more of San Francisco and their communities. But if they are making that really tight turn over Brisbane, then we get that twofold in noise because we get the reverberation back. And while the noise monitor here really shows the spot where our community is in the bowl, we have a large community that's on the hillside that is on the turning radius, but not so, it's worse when they're forcing that much harder turn. They have a lot more, sounds like more G-force. I don't know how to.
More energy.
More energy when they're really forcing that turn to go up and turn than they are when they're just taking off. So it makes it much more loud for our community.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
none of these are good for us, but
Yeah, I'm not sure that, the turn radius at that point. I mean, whatever the turn radius would be at that point, it would not preclude them from flying the rest of the stick.
correct. But they're just making that immediate turn, and that is where we get a lot of the energy noise.
Okay,
Right, and what we're seeing, so for this analysis, that is going to be unchanged. That isn't what we're looking at, to be clear. It's that part that they are still following the stick. It's after that turn around Brisbane that you get them then to turn.
And then they're keeping to turn.
And then they turn to go down the peninsula rather than going directly south.
Okay.
Right, and it's that latter part of the. This is.
okay, I just wanted to show one more thing, and that is that after that area that, so they do the stick departure and they go, and say they go down to the foot intersection for the procedure. That's like the intersection of several pathways. And these are all called transitions. And these are sort of intermediate roads between the departure road and the en route higher altitude road that they're going to be going up to. So it's
I
just,
also believe on the stick that the port's a flyby, right?
Say what?
Fly to, it's a flyby.
Mhm.
And that's important because you don't have to go all the way to port. You can cut that
can
turn
cut
onto
the
those
corner.
other transitions before port.
And I would
Yeah.
imagine that's at a really high elevation at that point.
Yes, they're probably,
2,200 feet at the stick.
but we don't care if the port is a flyby or a flyover
Six.
because they're,
not for this particular, but you just mentioned the transitions and I wanted to say why you saw so many cutting that. In the data, you showed a lot of them cutting off before port. And that's because it's a flyby, and they can turn to those other transitions before hitting.
they can only do
port.
it within a mile or so of port.
I mean, it's a little bit more than a mile, but yeah.
I mean,
Around that.
very, very close to port.
I mean, if they would actually go clear to the stick, it would make a big difference for us too, but that's a flyby.
Right, that's also a
Yeah.
flyby. Right. Anyway, it does make a little bit of difference. I just wanted to point out that those are both flybys, so. Rather than fly, I forgot what the other one's termed actually.
So this just gives you an overview of what the ultimate location and where they're going to is. And they are pretty much go straight down to the LA area. Except this one over here goes to Las Vegas, I believe, and some places, Fresno, I think Fresno and Las Vegas. And then the ones that go out over the water. And the question is, are any of these ones going over the water getting a shortcut? Because it wouldn't benefit them if they were. As you can see, they're supposed to go out to Foyle and then down to the Young intersection. So it'd be interesting to see if this data. And the reason this path and some of this path is not always usable because of military airspace, but anyway, the path is designed for sort of I guess you would call them along the coastline. Santa Barbara, San Diego, Long Beach. I'm missing a few words.
Orange County, LAX. So Orange County, LAX.
Oh, yeah, Orange County. Not LAX, but Orange County, because LAX is
Actually fly
on,
in.
LAX is in the inbound.
Varies sometimes.
No, they do. They
Long
do use
Beach,
it,
they'll go
right.
out to Catalina and pop back in.
True.
So-
Sometimes
At
they
least,
come in.
at
over
least for the
San
west flow.
Juan, So you're
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, for the west, we're talking sort of keeping everything to the west, but
But you
anyway,
were asking about port at or below 10.
no, I was down to Catalina.
Yeah, but you were asking about the port,
Oh, the altitude.
crossing altitude, at or below 10. At or below 10,000
Sam was
feet.
asking the altitude.
Sorry, yes. And stick is a flyover.
Oh, it is a flyover.
The way you can tell the difference is instead of just the star with the open circle in the middle, it'll have a ring around it. I think of it as a bullseye. You have to hit the bullseye.
That's a good way to think of it, yeah. So, at any rate, that's all I have. Whoops, it's not mine. So unless we have questions,
Well, thank you, Kathleen, for this.
and we have more discussion.
Of course, but for now, I mean, we asked, as you were going prior to the introduction, but anyone have any further questions or discussion? Okay.
Just a clarifying, so when it's an instrument landing, some of these where you go to port and where you ask the air traffic controllers to vector, that's not instrument landing, right? When it's instrument landing, there's no, it's just the instruments doing it. It's a computer doing it, right? So like the ones that went down the peninsula, 3 of them at 5 o'clock in the morning, that was not instrument driven. That was, I'm just
That was-
clarifying.
Well,
Those are also departures, not.
Right, but-
well, to be clear, the ones that are going down the peninsula are using their instruments to navigate by, but they are, so if you're on the stick, you're navigating using a certain mode of your computer that's saying, I'm flying a published procedure and I'm going to my next waypoint. And then if you are given a vector, then they say, okay, turn down to a heading of 110 degrees or something, turn left to a heading of 110 degrees. You don't have that pre-programmed in your box. So you have a little button up here that you can select and turn, and it's a heading select. And you turn that to 110 degrees. And so the airplane can fly on the instruments on your airplane, but you're not necessarily flying by any satellite navigation. And to be further clear, if you are in that position where you're starting the stick and the air traffic control wants to give you, let me just show you something, wants to give you a turn, they could say you're up here, stick on the peninsula, they could say, fly heading 130 degrees, and able go direct to Kitex, whatever that is. So they could tell you to go direct to KX. And you could set in the box, in your computer box, you just set KX and to execute, and you just go right to KX. And so you're not exactly on the path because you're not starting it exactly at YouTube, but if that straight line helps you, you'll just go straight to KX. If that's what they clear you to, and that's probably what they would do. I'm not an air traffic controller, so I better not opine on that. So basically you're using instruments on your airplane, but it's not part of a published procedure.
Thank you.
And the question on RNP, I reached out to Paul, who says hello, by the way. He informed me that 100% of the SFO fleet is RNP 1.0 capable. However, 90% is RNP 0.3 capable.
Okay.
That means the tolerance, so it's a much tighter tolerance for RMP 0.3, 0.3 of a mile. Versus a mile.
And what's required for, I don't know.
I asked him about the Yankee and he said, oh, go ahead and say 90 just to be safe, but it's higher than that.
Okay,
So 90% are capable of doing it.
90% or
Bare
better,
minimum, yeah.
90% or more.
90% plus for the Yankee.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, Paul.
Yeah. We aim to please.
Anything else for Kathleen? Questions? We're gonna come back to discussion, but any further questions for Kathleen? With that, okay, Bert, it's all yours. Please take us.
Okay. Steal your thunder for a moment, Kathleen.
Yes, so you need me to stop there.
I can steal it. All right, so what I have to share with you today is our bread and butter. So what you see on the screen right now is called ANOMS. It's Airport Noise and Operations Monitoring System by EnviroSuite, version 9. Won't get into the decimal numbers, but this is the tool that we use to grab the data for HMMH and the Roundtable to do the data reporting that we have done for you today. In doing this, I use 2 gates. We have this FQFC good out here off Foster City. And this is part of what we use as part of our Fly Quiet program. And so that was a great existing gate to catch offset arrivals rather than straight ins. So we went ahead and used that one. Further down, we created a gate called Stick Tight Turn. Basically goes from the 280 out to the end of Redwood Shores. And we're looking for those runway 1 departures that do that tight turn we were just talking about and come back down the peninsula. And we'll show you how it works. So what I did as the meeting was starting is I went ahead and pulled up a week's worth of flight data from December 1st, 2020, October 1st, 2023. And you can see down here, we have 32,204 flight tracks. That's for all the airports. So what we're going to do right now to make this a little easier for us, I'll go ahead and move this listing of people I see on my screen that you can't see. I'm going to go over to the airport and I'm going to turn this down to just SFO. And once we get that, we will have our, come on, there we go. Flying right by everything. Oh, let's go and turn everybody off first. Now, back down. And we'll say, okay, so now we're going to drop this number down to 7,617. Further, what we would do, and makes our analysis easier, we'll start with the 2.8s. So we'll go to runways, and we'll go ahead and turn those on to just 2.8 left, 2.8 right. We'll say, okay. And then we'll go over here to operations and change that to just arrivals. Now our number went from 7,600 down to 3,757. And then we'll go ahead and select. There's our arrivals. And we can see that we have down the bay arrivals. We have bodegas, we have surfers, we have diamonds with the vectoring out here due to separation. And out here, these loops that you see are actually missed approaches and go-arounds. We have a decent amount of them at SFO. Working with the FAA to try and eliminate that. First of all, it's inefficient. Second of all, the airlines don't like spending that money. I think somebody said it was $200,000 for a wide body to make a go around or something like that. Not an insignificant amount of money or time. And gosh, if you've been flying for 13, 14 hours, last thing you want to do is go around the merry-go-round again. You want to get off. So what we would do with the gate is go ahead and look at our arrivals. And we would take our data here. So on the gates, I have the stick tight turn selected. And I'm gonna go ahead and filter it by flights that go through it. And actually, I'm gonna turn the other one off first. Now, filter.
This isn't the stick procedure though. This is 2.8 arrivals.
Oh, that would have been the other one I wanted. Sorry about that. So we can do a really great thing here and say, bring it all back. Thank you. And so we'll say select all again. And filter. There, we have our offsets. And as Kathleen mentioned, there are a few sticks that do it. There's a few pirates that do it. There's some bodegas that do it. But for the vast majority, they're going to be the diamond on the east. We have the bodega here and then down the bay we mentioned earlier. That's how we go through selecting the data. Once we've done that, we then will go ahead and eliminate those that we don't want. All the blue ones here would be the ones that we fed to the roundtable for the analysis on it. We'll do the reversal again and select all one more time. Turn off this one. Go back to our tight turn. Filter on that. And there you can see those that turned in tight to SFO or we're on another routing. So actually on this one, wrong one to select for this one on the October because the ones were out of service. So basically the principle is there. We would just go select another date.
Can also be one departures. These are still just the 2/8 arrivals.
Oh, yeah, yeah, thank you. You're working faster than I am today, Gene. And it would be departures as well. There. There. Okay. Select all. Still got the tweets, right? No. Yes. No. There we go. There's my desired outcome. And so we're looking for flights that cut through here, not the ones that went here where we expected them or did a slight early turn, but we'll go for that. And this is how we collected that grouping for HMMH and the roundtable for the analysis. We thought this one was creative. I actually did that turn out over the bay and tried to keep it as much as I could over the bay. I think we still vote for a 050 if at all possible, which is the right turn that goes down the bay. Anyway.
That's great.
That's how we do the magic we do.
Well, thank you.
Any questions?
Any
on-
questions? If not, then we'll go ahead and turn it over to Gene.
Actually, to Jason.
Jason, perfect.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And then, can you see my screen?
Yes, you see the slide.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. As Bert said, he handed us the data, the two separate data sheets, the one with the stick departures that were deviations from the full procedure, and then the 2/8 arrivals. So just like a brief little overview. We've talked about a lot of this stuff already, but you can see up here at the top, the stick departure is only authorized off of runway 1, left and right. The instructions are to climb on heading 014, which is actually the magnetic runway heading, to 520 feet at or below 210 knots, then a climbing left turn direct stick waypoint, and then a climbing left turn direct port at or below 10,000 feet. And then for the runway 28 arrivals, so as Bert mentioned, there's this fly quiet Foster City gate. And all of the aircraft in our data set went through that gate, which is good. And most of them went to 28 right, which is also good. But their deviation from the center point was pretty far off, which took them further down south than we'd like to see. So, but we'll get to that when we get to the 28 left arrivals or 28 arrivals. So we went through and we looked at weather data just to make sure there was no significant weather events that were the cause of all of these deviations, and there just was no trend available. We looked at there were days where weather could have been a factor, but then there were also days that were beautiful and they had plenty of deviations. So we don't think it's like again, weather may be a factor in some of them, but it's definitely not the factor in all of them, or even the majority of them. So a little bit about the data set. It includes 510 separate flights between May 23rd, 2023 and October 31st, 2023. So all the flights either deviated from the standard stick instrument departure or were following an alternative departure procedure, and they all take place between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And then all flights contained within the data set penetrated that stick tight turn gate, which we'll show on the next slide. So again, they make the early turn and then they penetrate this gate. And I will say, I was a former air traffic controller, and I'll agree with most of what everybody said. The chances are, my thoughts, and I don't want to speak on behalf of ATC at SFO because I've never worked in an airport that busy, but chances are that this is an ATC kind of suggestion where they, for either spacing or any number of reasons, like Kathleen said, but they're just telling them to proceed direct. And it's all of the aircraft, as you'll see in later on slides. The majority of them are going to Los Angeles and Las Vegas. So, and those are the big paths that we see. So, I mean, and we've also seen this shortcutting of standard instrument departures all over the country. We work with BWI, and they experience the same thing with a lot of their standard instrument departures too. The aircraft take off and immediately get cleared to a point, much further on down the SID. So just getting into the data now. So when we have the flight deviations that were contained within the data set, we separated them out by the airlines. United, Southwest, SkyWest, those are the major contributors. Again, it doesn't seem like much of a trend because those are also some of the heavy users of SFO. So here's the distribution among time between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So again, we see a lot between 10 p.m. and midnight, and then again 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. with it dropping off between 2 and 3.
So Jason, that reflects a drop off in overall flights too. During those hours,
Mm-hmm. Yep. So spread amongst days of the week. Again, it seems for the most part, pretty evenly distributed. So no, one glaring day that receives a lot more of these deviations than others. The majority of the departures were taken off of runway 1 left. And I don't know if Bert has an idea of what the standard distribution is. So, one of my thoughts is like, I don't know, 1 right is the longer runway, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. Again, this is just, most of the departures are on 1 left. They could be taking off in kind of clearing the path for the departures that are coming off 1 right so that they follow the full procedure down to port. And then, the departures off of 1 left make that quick turn. But really, I think a good, and we'll talk about this at the end, I think a good kind of, next step on some of these would just be to reach out to ATC and talk to them, because if it happens often enough, chances are it's something that, when I was an air traffic controller, we called it an ism. Whatever facility you worked at when I was at Fallon, there are Fallonisms. And it's basically, how to operate within the rules, but be as safe and efficient as possible. And so as an air traffic controller, one of your main goals is to control that aircraft as safely and efficiently and to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So you want to have the least amount of aircraft on your frequency that you can. So if you can put an aircraft on a heading direct away point that's outside of your control and you see no conflicts and you can switch them to the next controller, that's ideal.
Eddie Daniels used to call that catch and release air traffic control.
Yeah.
That's our when we're on a flight.
Oh yeah.
So here are some of the busiest dates that experience the most deviations throughout the day, or throughout the night. So you see, like the day with the most was May 23rd and June 11th. Again, like I looked, so there was a little bit of wind and maybe a little bit of weather on May 23rd, as I recall, but there was nothing for June 11th. It looked perfect. Winds were low all day, and so again, I don't think there's one factor involved here.
And Jason, this, just to clarify, all of this data is based on the data that Bert gave you and all of that. Restricted the funds from 10 PM to 7 AM.
Right.
Correct.
So all of
Yep.
these are nighttime numbers.
Yes. Yep. And so here's the distribution among the destinations. Again, like I said, Las Vegas and Los Angeles, those are the heavy ones. It makes sense to me because you can clear them to a point and just kind of get them headed direct their destination right away. Especially when there's not as much traffic in the sky at night. I think that's probably enticing for air traffic control, and then also enticing for the pilot if they know they're going to save a little bit of time. So. And this other is just, obviously every other destination that is below 12, all added
Jason,
together.
if I could ask a question here.
Sure.
So it could be that because traffic volumes are low during the nighttime, they could be just either requesting as a pilot to get a direct heading, or ATC could be giving them a direct heading, right? Just to get them out of the way.
Correct. Yep. Either one of those is feasible.
Okay. The
Yep.
reason I asked that is because something could be done in that the roundtable could go to the FAA to say, please don't do that during low volume times. We understand why you want to do it, but it's potentially waking up the population on the peninsula, right? So anyway, I just thought I would say that.
No, that's an excellent point, because, I mean, the reason we're looking at this, or the reason we're looking at the nighttime, because this is a low traffic time. If anything could be done to improve the noise impact on roads, it is during that time period.
Right.
Well, not 100%, if I
No.
may. So we're looking at 10 to 7.
Mhm.
The FAA has already told us that like 1 to 5 is totally low time. So between 10 and 1, they have a decent amount of traffic out there.
Still out.
So we can still start asking them to phase it in, might help out.
Right.
But it's not, just to make a point, because the 1.5 reminds me of that's our night, night procedure.
They shouldn't be there.
And, well, just to make a point, that the night requires a certain conditions and certain
It does.
absence of flights. Even if we're talking about a 10 PM till 1 AM on the stick, this is the regular all-day pattern that they're used to. We're not asking them, we would not be asking them to fly something new and unusual and strange, just fly the published procedure. Just the
Right.
published procedure. This is not.
Unless you need it for
Yeah.
safety or
Oh,
something.
of course.
Right.
And I think, to your point, the night was completely different because you have to coordinate with the traffic coming from Oakland. Is that correct? This one here is not the case. This is strictly
This is a procedure.
SFO, the procedure that to be used.
There are flights that are coming from Oakland to fly.
But there are reasons to vector
But
airplanes
sure.
off of
Yeah,
procedure.
Understood.
Yeah, but they, by and large, it does not seem like it would be asking a big ask to just say fly the procedure. Unless you have a really good reason to, and we don't think that this is a really good reason.
No, well, right, because of, right,
I don't think shortcuts are a good reason.
not during the night, right? Okay, go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
And then here's the distribution amongst the aircraft types. So again, what we'd expect to see based on the type of aircraft that the jet aircraft that use these departures.
And go to those locations, because if you look at those aircraft, that's exactly what they use to go to
Yep.
LAX, Las Vegas.
Yep. And then we'll have a
So
chance
our jet
to discuss
people
like
go to Las Vegas.
we'll have a chance to discuss some of my thoughts for both of these data sets and what we can do moving forward here at the end. But the next slide, we'll move on to the runway 28 data, unless there are any questions on the stick before we get to the 28.
Not here in the room. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the runway 28 data that we received, it included 4,541 separate flights between April 1st, 2023 and October 31st, 2023. So all the flights were determined to have deviated, I guess, from the ideal fly quiet recommendations through the middle of that fly quiet Foster City gate. And they deviated an average of 5,156 feet. So just for reference, I'll show you on the next slide. 5,156 feet is right about where that line intercepts with is it the San Mateo Bridge that it's by? I'll show you on the next slide. And like I said, all flights contained within the data set penetrated the Fly Quiet Foster City gate. So we can see here, and again, this is the San Mateo Bridge. Is that right? I'm sorry, I wouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So you can see right here, this is the gate that they set up. And here, just for reference, are some of those other offset approaches that we talked about before. This is the Quiet Bridge visual. So this is the approximate path inbound to 28 right. This is the RNAV RNP Yankee that we were talking about before, where you see it kind of goes, it actually goes out further into the bay through the gate and then jogs itself back in to line up with the runway. So both of those are better than what we saw in this data, which is that standard or that deviation, the average deviation of 5,000 feet approximately puts them right down about here. Kind of right. Can you see my mouse on your screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So right where that gate intercepts the bridge is where most of these aircraft were crossing.
Jason, if I
Yes.
I don't know if you know the answer, but if you could go back to that slide, what difference in decibel would that make for that 5,000 plus per 5,000 feet there from being on?
3 dB reduction
It
start.
would be noticeable.
Yeah.
I'd hate to put a dB on it. We can
Yeah, but
determine
it
that
definitely, yeah,
further
definitely,
analysis.
Yeah.
but
okay.
it would be
It
noticeable.
is not, yeah,
Yeah, for sure, noticeable.
okay.
Okay. So looking at the times, the deviations by time, we're seeing, almost all of them happen between 10 at night and 10 and midnight are the vast majority of all of these deviations.
Or until 1 a.m. too.
Yeah.
If you
Yep,
throw
1 a.m. Yep,
in,
yep.
Then you for sure have all of them.
Yeah. So flight deviations by the airline operator, United has the most deviations, which is also interesting because as Kathleen and Bert had mentioned before, United kind of owns and operates this FMS bridge visual, which I'll talk about on a further slide also. So they have access to that non-visual visual approach that they could use at night. And they're still the highest on the list. I know that they're United, correct me if I'm wrong, but they conduct the most operations, commercial operations at SFO. Is that right?
Correct, especially when
Okay.
you figure in SkyWest.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So, you would if the deviations are just a matter of air traffic control, kind of either vectoring for spacing or just kind of standard everyday issues that pop up in air traffic control, then you would expect the distribution to kind of fall out with how many operations each airline has, and this seems to make sense, with United having the most. Pretty evenly distributed amongst the days of the week. So, on a good note, as we kind of saw in the slide that Kathleen showed, still here in the same as her slide, the majority of these arrivals are going to 28 right. So if there is a silver lining, I suppose it's that, with the vast majority, almost 100% going to runway 28 right.
I think one thing we should mention, Jason, is you can't do simultaneous offsets.
Yep. So here are some of the biggest dates or the biggest nights for flight deviations. On the 17th of July, 47 flights, that kind of went south of that towards the southern point of that gate. So again, I would think that's probably, just about the majority of I don't know. We'd have to look at some more data to see exactly how many flights total they have between those hours going to 28 right and 28 left. But the fact that there are so many, I think it's just a matter of again, ATC kind of doing what they feel like they need to do to be safe and efficient to get those aircraft down. And I know, yep. And then I also know that ILS, like we showed on Kathleen showed on her slide, that's still an approach that's used quite a bit, and that's basically a straight in. A lot of the RNAVs, the regular RNAVs, which aren't RNPs, those are kind of straight ins also. And if you're taking a straight in approach from any significant distance into runway 28, you're going to be pretty close to Foster City and all of the other communities right along the bay.
So what I asked for is whether 28 right could have been closed for a period of time for maintenance or something. Because they can close them for a night and reopen.
It's true. I mean, it's not uncommon to have rubber removal or whatever maintenance done during a given night. In fact, oftentimes we do get those reports. I'd have to go back and look at the days we gave you to be able to pull that.
It would be something just to see, because you have that results now, and you can look at those top 10 days just to see if there was any closures. Because I agree with Jason, that's quite a large number. All majority of them.
I tried to look, while you're mentioning that, Gene, I tried to look at archived NOTAMs for runway closures.
Yep.
And I kept seeing, the only thing I was seeing for a 28 left closure was early this year. I guess they had there was all kinds of news about them shutting down 28 left for some sort of big maintenance, but I didn't see, even in the old NOTAMs, anything significant. Although there could have been.
That was
but
a
I
complete
did try and check.
resurface of the runway, Jason.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't use SFO very often during that period.
Yeah.
Not very sporting of you.
So here we are on the next slide. So these are the flight deviations by the origin or the departure location. Nothing really stands out here. It's not all of the flights. And again, where they came from at this point, it's not going to, we checked it just to make sure, but it's not likely that has any sort of impact on whether or not these aircraft are going to take an offset approach, an RNP or a bridge visual.
Jason, looking at
Yes.
the number of
Yeah, can you go
flights-
back?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you go back to the origin?
Yeah.
Oh, the origin. Yep,
Yeah.
right here.
So, looking at them all, they're all sort of coming from the eastish.
Yep.
Top four.
Well,
for sure.
Las Vegas, Houston. Yeah, I mean, with San Francisco, I guess almost everybody.
I mean, there's no Seattle, Portland, Honolulu.
LA.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if this is just reflecting the fact that these guys are predominantly flying the Diamond, which has the best opportunity for flying an offset.
Right.
That could be. I wonder if we can, we might have the opportunity to filter, some of those ANOMS results. Bert, do you have the ability to filter them by their point of origin? If it was on the
Yes.
data, I'm sure you probably would have. Okay. Yeah, so maybe we can take a look at that and kind of a follow-up or analysis.
Yeah.
Because you'd expect to see more LA and Vegas being higher when they were higher in the last data set.
Well, keep in mind too, Los Angeles, things like that, they'll be more for 28 left because they'll come up the Surfer. Whereas the Diamond is where we're seeing the ops come from.
Mostly Diamond.
And those would be obviously Diamond origination points.
So it's easier to use the offset when you're gonna land on to it, right?
Right.
For sure.
Or you're more likely to get assigned.
So,
Yeah.
it's just the way things work generally. Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
So here's the number of deviations in the data set distributed amongst the aircraft types. And again, the majority of them are the players are the aircraft airframe types that you'd expect to see at a large international airport like SFO. So we talked a little bit while Bert and Kathleen were giving their presentations about RNP, and I know we've already gone over it, but this is just like a visual to kind of, this is from Southwest, to show who's authorized, and this was updated on just a few days ago, on August 20th, 2024. So you can see the full fleet on all those airline operators on the left. They're full fleet, RNP capable. And then these ones, they're sort of partially capable. And you can read, which among their fleet is not authorized. And then all of the aircraft or airline operators as of August 20th that are not RNP capable are authorized. And so if there's any question on some, I know that you can reach out to the individual operators themselves, and they'll be able to tell us which amongst their fleet are RNP capable. So I know we talked about the FMS bridge visual. Kathleen showed the approach plate for it. So the FMS bridge visual, again, that's like it's like the charted visual flight procedure, the quiet bridge visual that anybody can use. But instead of being, like kind of a true visual approach, all of the points are kind of plugged into the flight management system and the navigation. And so they can kind of use both simultaneously. So they can still follow the same flight path as the bridge visual, but under instrument conditions, monitoring the path on their navigation instruments. So it's maintained by United Airlines, but it's provided to air carriers, and they just have to request it through their CMO. And then there's probably some steps involved, some qualifications, or I don't know if they have to fly it in a simulator a few times to get qualified, or how that works. But basically all of the carriers can use it if they'd like to. So again, it's similar to the other RNAV visual. So you won't find it on the IFP gateway. You won't find it on other sites that show the approach plates or the approaches available to SFO. But it was accepted as a viable approach by the FAA. So they don't promote it, but it is acceptable and legal and used. And then pilots can request the FAA maintained charted visual flight procedure, the bridge visual, if they don't have access. So if you don't have access to the FMS one, you will have access to the charted one, which is published and promoted by the FAA. So there were a few items. I'll start real quick. We had mentioned ATC. So one of the things that ATC is trying, they're trying to accomplish a few different things. Like I said before, safely and efficiently. That's the thing that they hammer home. That's what you're really trying to do, as fast and as safe as possible to get those aircraft through the airspace. But they do mention, noise abatement in the 7110, and that you can vector for noise abatement, which is an opportunity for air traffic control to take them off a published approach for the opposite reason of what we're seeing here, and that's to provide some relief for the communities. There's also opportunities within, and I'm not sure exactly what's used today at a facility like NorCal or the SFO Tower. But chances are the majority of these instructions are coming from NorCal TRACON, and usually they have something called flight progress strips. So a flight progress strip is just a little, it used to be a strip of paper on like a little clip that you put on a board, and this machine would pop it out called the FIDO, and it would have all the information you'd need in sort of a distilled way on this little strip. It would have call sign, aircraft type, their route of flight with all the points they're going to hit. And then there'd be a point for a little note down at the bottom. So you can say, one of the notes could be FRC, which means full route clearance. So when clearance delivery, who is the one that issues the aircraft their clearance before they take off, they would read the whole clearance. So one of the things that, that could be coordinated is that, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. or whatever the roundtable decides is kind of what they're aiming for. They could request that ATC make a note on those flight progress strips saying, request full stick departure, request, fly full published stick departure. And then they can relay that. And then again, if able, if that's a request you make, it's just another opportunity to kind of make that request to fly the full departure. Let's see here.
Jason, let me ask you a question on that last
Sure.
comment you made. And do these progress strips, I presume, are generated from the flight plans filed by the airline's headquarters and the dispatchers?
Yep,
Is
yeah,
there
so
a
it's,
is there a place on, I'm sure we're not talking about paper flight plans anymore, and it's electronically, but it's still probably a form. So is there a place in the comment section that you can put something as obscure as, please, please rock on full stick?
yeah, yep. You can kind of, you could put, whatever pertinent information. So again, you'd probably have to write it shorthand, and maybe you'd have to coordinate via like an internal line. But I'm sure like, Tower or whoever, or clearance delivery, whoever's controlling that aircraft has a shout line to whoever's delivering the clearance. So they'll be able to chat back and forth. And so if they come up with a shorthand, or even, they could even come up with letters of agreement or letters of memorandum, that say between these hours, fly the full departure, because that's what I think that's one thing that gets kind of in the weeds is, a lot of people will spend a lot of time coming up with these approaches, these departures, only to have them shortcut, based on efficiency or traffic management. And again, there are always going to be times where ATC, if you have a fast mover behind a slow, and they want to, get that fast mover, they might turn him short and get him out of the way so he's not kind of coming up the backside of the aircraft in front of him. Or the opposite scenario can be true. It's any number of scenarios, but you can come up with a shorthand so that you could put a note and say fly full departure, fly full procedure. So yeah, that's
And
absolutely
that
an
would be
option.
something the airlines would have to initiate from their.
So it could go either way, like the aircraft in their notes, they could put, request fly full departure. But you could also have ATC, expect full departure, expect to fly full departure, something along those lines. But yeah, there's options. Really anything. That's another good rule is even if there's no kind of a specific guidance as to whether or not you're able to, just about anything can be accomplished with coordination, with the right coordination. So as long as the instructions are clear and they're in, flying the full procedure is not, some outrageous request, it's there. It's been, analyzed and gone over 1,000 times for obstruction clearance and everything else. That procedure is good. And all you want them to do is to fly that full procedure. So I think there are, that's probably one of the best ways that you can just get a constant reminder. I don't know like how amenable, either ATC or the airlines are to that, but I guess we'll never know unless we ask them to do that. So I think it's worth the chat for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks,
And that's,
Jason.
yep, absolutely. I was just going to ask if anybody else has any other questions. I'd be happy to answer.
I appreciate that. And I'm gonna turn it over here to the room if there's any questions from any of the presenters, or any of the presenters would like to add anything else before I go to public comment.
We want to make one point. If I may steal your screen for a moment, Jason.
Yes, sir. Hang on one second. All right, it's all yours.
All right, so I am not throwing HMMH under the bus. I did want to make one thing perfectly clear, is this Foster City Fly Quiet Gate is quite long. The center point is here. And as Jason mentioned, that most of the nighttime flights we're catching are down here. I wouldn't say they're deviated. If we're gonna monitor this more regularly, we'll put a gate specifically for the procedures so that we can say what deviation is, things like that. I just want to be fair to what's going on right now. And I did pull up the July 17th, 2023, 10 p.m. to the 18th at 7 a.m. So you can see there were 110 flights in that time period. And then if we filter out, we're left with only 29 flights that did that right side.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the thoughts that I was having when Jason was also presenting, was that I think we can refine how we define a deviation, right?
Yeah, this
So
was just a first foray into it, yeah.
Exactly, but I had the same thought, that
I'm not sure it's deviation, it's,
Well,
So
it-
I think my intention was deviation from the preferred path, which would be,
It's a
you know, down the
missed
center of the gate. Yep.
Center point of gate,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I'm not
but I think.
not
when
beating
it's-
you up for it, Jason, I'm just saying that you did the right thing, you made that call, you didn't know what we did it for, and it's a big gate.
Right.
Yep.
We could maybe refine this,
Well, what we could say is this is really where we want it, and then
Right.
deviate from there,
Okay,
right? Rather than deviating from the center of the gate.
Or another one to do it is gates, real close to each other, all starting at the same point, but going further out. That way you can peel off your counts.
So what I was thinking is almost having the center of the gate at that,
You can,
at the, center of the FMS
yeah,
procedure, right? Or the R&D Yankee
you
procedure.
just figure out how wide you
Pick one
want
of
it.
those, pick that as your
right,
center,
and
'cause
then
that's where you
who
want it.
goes through
And
there.
then everything that deviates from there would make more sense.
Yeah.
Because if they were deviating 5,000 feet from there, that would be a problem.
Are they going further out over the bay? That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
which way are they
exactly
deviating?
right.
Anyway, we
Yeah.
can address that with FERC.
Any further questions?
I feel like a deer in the headlights, but no, I think I
Sorry.
get it. No, I think I get it. And, you know, when HMMH and you were, you know, filtering and
Yeah,
doing all, working the magic to get rid of flights, I think that's a really interesting concept that we can look at things individually through that method of filtering.
we can get it down to the individual radar clicks.
Anything else? Okay. Okay,
No.
with that, then I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for public and for public comments on what we have discussed.
Yes, we have one public comment within
Alright,
in the room, so
Give us a second.
one moment while I start the timer. Yeah.
Where do you want him to sit or stand?
The speaker.
Really? Perhaps just right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Srinivas.
Just sit down.
Go ahead and sit down.
Sure.
When we started.
All right, thank you. My name is Srinivas. I'm a resident of Foster City. I've been engaging with BIRD and several members of the community here. The most disruptive to our community is international flights, which are typically large body aircrafts that almost never take the offset approach. So the questions I have are around why international flights don't take the offset approach, why they always come in straight in. On checking with the FAA, I was told that the landing approach is decided between the ATC and the pilots. Some of the questions I have here is what has SFO Noise Office or the Roundtable, what work has been done to see if we can incentivize the ATC to assign offset approaches specifically to these 777s or these large body aircrafts that typically are international carriers. Secondly, I also wanted to find out the data that was used by H&M today. Could the public get access to similar data? I have been able to obtain some data from the SFO Noise Office. Can we continue to engage the public to see if we can obtain similar data to do the analysis ourselves?
We are restricted from, well, if I may through the chair.
Sure, absolutely.
First of all, we're restricted, we'll go working backwards.
Mhm.
We're restricted from giving raw data.
Okay.
Now, if it's a small chunk of data for a period of time for analysis, we can do it.
Okay.
So yeah, we can further go through that. I answered your first question before, many times, and so has Lauren. The big question is, how can we get the international carriers to do it? An offset.
Mhm.
Some of the companies prefer that they not do it because it's a safety issue for them. And one of the big things we found was foreign carriers on the down the bay arrival, which would be awesome. You're keeping them out over the bay, they can do an offset, it'd be great. But my understanding is they prefer that the captain be in charge of that leg of the flight. The person who can actually see and maintain contact with the runway at the airport is the co-pilot. Because they're on the right side of the aircraft and they can see it. The captain's wing high, can't see it. And so they don't like to do it. The other one is, many of them prefer the ease of a straight in. And the last one is, some pilots just prefer to get off the runway quicker, and the left does that for them.
Can I use my 40 seconds more? Can I have a follow-up? So the follow-up I have is basically to see, is the ATC recommending an offset and the pilot rejects it? Or is there any communication about what potential approaches the pilots can use when they're landing?
We'd have to open up that communication with ATC if there's any restrictions that they have or anything like that.
Yep.
We
So
don't-
I would agree
But-
with Bert on that. In my experience, you know, it could be any of those scenarios. So ATC could say type approach requesting to the airline. And again, so RNP, out of all of the approaches that are available, the RNPs are you know, kind of the newest. And you know, visual approaches, I think for commercial airlines aren't as typical also. So an ILS or a regular RNAV approach, those, most of the pilots are more experienced with those, more comfortable with those, and you're flying at night. So you have a lot of things kind of going on for the pilot that I'm sure, like, you know, if they do have any say in the approach that they're taking, they're probably going to request an ILS. They're probably going to request like an RNAV straight in, because again, like Bert said, those are the easiest, those are the ones they're most familiar with. And I think those are the reasons why those get flown the most. So it'll just, I think, you know, one thing that will add to the RNP being utilized more is we're seeing more aircraft, you know, one, becoming qualified to fly it, and two, the pilots getting used to flying, because the one thing you'll notice on RNP approaches, they always have pretty significant little turns or jogs within kind of the critical phase of flight towards the end of their approach. You won't see that in typical RNAVs, and you won't see that in an ILS. Those are straight in approaches. You line up to the runway quite a ways out, and you're just, you know, hanging onto that heading the whole way down to the runway. These are a little bit more complicated because you got to make a turn pretty close to where you'll be landing. So that kind of adds to the pilot's concerns, I'm sure, and the fact that they're new approaches. You know, you don't have a lot of experience with those, but that'll grow over time. So that's my 2 cents.
And one other thing, if I may add on Jason's tail there. My father used to be a Delta pilot. You talked about San Francisco requiring special training for flying into SFO. I don't know if United used to require that for their pilots, Kathleen. Did United require special training for pilots in United to fly into SFO?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a special category.
Yeah. So SFO special category airport, most airlines will require special training. Question is, do they do it?
Well,
And
I'm
so,
sorry, this is for the parallel, this short, the close runways, not short, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just your question.
close runway, it's in general,
Okay,
they
that's okay.
requires a
All right,
brief.
just want to make sure I answered
Yeah.
the right question.
And so that can also lead to difficulties with foreign carriers not doing an offset or something like that.
But I'd also add that we are talking about next steps, and I appreciate your comments because it really does help us come up with what are the next steps as well. Because we've just started this, so you're asking questions, we don't even know the answers to some of those. Okay.
So on this topic, Bert, can we kind of include in the record report the RNP utilization for landing?
The RP what?
Utilization, how many, you know, statistics on how many flights are utilizing that?
The RNP Yankee will be the easiest one to suss out. We would put in multiple gates to do it. We used to be able to do it with our Soya PRM pretty well, but we don't get that information from the FAA.
Couldn't your gates actually capture the FMS rotational as well?
Possible. Well, the thing about it is you want to have to say it's these gates, multiple gates.
You're never gonna be 100% correct, but you can I think you can set them up.
We can get close.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, you do a good job in your report for breaking out the 2-8 left and right and for the hours at night as well. So that's really good data. Be nice to add just the
another component maybe to that, however.
That would be extremely helpful for our effort, because we have the data, the information, right? And even though it's not 100%, but at least we get an idea.
Yeah, you would think the data is there and you could just quickly ask for it, but
It's,
even the FAA.
Yeah,
can't
it's
get it.
nothing
Yeah.
Nothing simple.
No. it's
No,
like-
we've had that
wait a
with
minute.
GBAS, you
Yeah,
know, let's go
exactly.
find what we're doing for GBAS. It's like, yeah, good luck.
Right, the FAA can't even determine that.
No.
Anyway, maybe
okay.
if some gates like that is reasonable or something, might be good.
The one thing I will show here is, in general, we know the standard instrument departure some of the time, and the terminal arrivals. So we get that with pretty good regularity. But there are certain days where it's blank.
Okay, we're gonna go through public comments on Zoom.
Yes,
Diane?
we have 2 public comments on Zoom. First is from Ms. Mary Jo Fremont, then Ms. Darlene Yapley. Ms. Mary Jo, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, in fact, we were concerned. I don't need to make a comment because you're going to call on Darlene Yapley. So I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Yapley, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's been mentioned that SFO is working on a new and updated Fly Quiet program. I would like to have the roundtable consider that as part of the new Fly Quiet program, it should include ATC report compliance with procedures as a standard report. Otherwise, it becomes very personal or uncomfortable to escalate these types of things to ATC. And if it was part of a standard report, it would just be informative, which would be helpful. This actually came up at the A&E panel discussion on Fly Quiet programs for best practices last year. And if we ask for ATC to come and invite them to the TWG to comment, that would be great. And I want to reiterate HMMH's comment that asking to fly the procedure is not really an outrageous ask. And the other thing is, when we went to TRACON 2 years ago, I think you guys went there also after the A&E conference, but we had a lot of conversation, and the TRACON folks are supposed to execute and be evaluated on definitely noise abatement procedures. So if they're not getting data saying they're not doing it, then it'd be hard to evaluate and hold people responsible. So I think to make this constructive and a positive thing, it would be just part of the Fly Quiet program, and there would be ATC report compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just quickly respond to that, because I think it's
Sure.
important to understand, and thank you for that, Darlene. But I will say that most Fly Quiet programs, in San Francisco's Fly Quiet program is of this ilk, and that is, it's a grading system. And anytime you enter into a grading system, the FAA is pretty adamant that they cannot be included in that grading system. You're not allowed to grade the FAA. And so we can ask, and I'm not saying we don't ask, because it could be a good ask when you're revamping or redoing your Fly Quiet program, but I just want to set realistic expectations that every time we've asked, they said thanks, but no thanks.
And that would include even a good marginal port versus a percentage or number?
Typically, yes.
Okay, just making sure.
But ask, it's.
No,
it's to ask,
we're
but-
gonna ask.
Yeah, right, but we've not had very much success in the ones we've been involved with.
All right, thank you. Any more?
Ms. Mary Jo has her hand raised again.
Ms. Fremont?
Ms. Fremont, is your hand still raised?
Yes, I was not unmuted. So in reaction to what Jean just said, you have 2 options. Either you don't grade the airlines, which really is not important. The grading doesn't matter. The value of the Fly Quiet program report is in the data to show what happens. Or if you want to keep your grading, well, then you make a separate request. Compliance with procedures. That's it. That's pretty simple. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any more?
No,
Thank you. Thank you everyone for your comment and for participating with us. And I'm gonna turn it over here very quickly to our group for next step. And Jean, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, well, I think we've already heard good things already about what next steps. I want to lay out what I've always followed in principle in doing this is one is the first step is to define the problem.
Yes.
And I think we've done that through what Kathleen and Bert and HMH has provided today. So assuming we all concur that this is a problem and we'd like to continue, then the next step is really to try to find ways of resolving the problem, right? And so I think clearly one of the next steps is to get in touch with the FAA. I think we've been told how to do that. You always go through their community engagement officer, right? And let them know what we want. And so and I think it is important that we let them know we think ATC needs to be involved here. And however they want to do that, because we need to understand from them why they're doing what they're doing, right? And then I think there have been some other ideas that we've written down here, but I think this is, I think the next meeting, in my opinion, would be more of a brainstorming meeting. Let's have ATC come if they're available by then, and then be brainstorming some next steps and ideas to really solve the issue. Kathleen, do you have anything?
I think that makes perfect sense. And we have our meeting in November 19th, so there is ample time to invite the FAA.
And Jason and I will come up with things as well based on what we've heard today as well. But I would recommend that this group do as well. Members of the group come up with things that they may have thought of as a result of this meeting.
And you might have time to coordinate with Bert to see if there's some refinement of the data.
On the offset.
Yeah, let's talk more on that. I had a good conversation with Jason the other day, so the three of us have a great one.
That'd be great. Yeah.
And we can all kind of just generally follow up on the other items that.
So on the takeoff, our main goal would be to have them follow the published procedure whenever possible and try to instill that is our request to do that. And in that published procedure is flying near the
stick
waypoint. And I know that making that a flyby instead of a fly over, it would be a difficult ask. But just getting out to that point, they would get quite a bit of elevation and they get quite a bit of more turning radius. So they're not making that tight of turn, and would particularly help us if they're going over to port.
Well, I need to pull the regulation up for that, the printed procedure for that right now, to see. But the last I recall, it was
Jason had it too, maybe
2,200. Yeah. Let's see this. Here we are. Yeah. So, yeah, 2,100 feet before making that left turn.
Yeah. So it's actually. So are you talking about the altitude at stick?
Yeah. So they want you above 520, less than 2,100.
2,100 knots, right? Yeah, on the speed.
Yep. And then when you
basically they just turn after they get to 520, they start their left-hand turn and they just keep climbing through stick all the way to port. And they just basically the only restriction is stay below 10,000 by the time you get to port.
That's true. I see it right here. Yeah. It used to be 2,100 feet at stick, or 2,200 feet. And that's gone. Yeah.
Anyway, I just think that the closer they get to stick, the better it is for the angle of the turn.
So stay further south than
actually there is a takeoff minimum for runway 1 left, 1 right. Standard with minimum climb 500 feet, nautical mile to 1,600. So that is in there. They want them there.
But before they can really make that turn, the tighter they make it, the more altitude they have to have, because they have to clear San Bruno Mountain, and that's at 1,900 feet.
If that's further up, yes, they definitely do. If they're crank them over the airport.
Unless they don't want to hit the mountain, so.
But if they're going over Brisbane, yes, you have to clear the.
Yeah.
Mountain.
And that's when they're really, really gunning it, when they're really trying to clear that mountain.
So what is it your ask is?
Well, I mean, for me, a gentler, wider turn would be certainly better for, I believe, for Brisbane noise. That may increase noise at Mission Bay, or not at Mission Bay, at Hunters Point, and it might increase some noise at the Excelsior areas, and it might increase it for our ridge people. Because it's going to be giving them a wider turn. But I think in general, it would be better for Brisbane. And I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not sure.
Right, that's like I said earlier, that's a different problem than we were addressing here today, but it's certainly something that we could also bring up.
I think we ought to play with that one with noise reports and see which ones garner the most.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we find that flights that are taking it wide and slow are bothering more people, which is entirely possible.
It's possible.
Because of wide and slow.
Got it. Yeah.
That oftentimes that noise tends to resonate longer and people don't like that. So that would be an issue. We can see, but I'm willing to play with it.
But if they go all the way to Stick,
yeah,
it makes it a wider turn and would probably benefit at least downtown Brisbane.
Yeah, most likely.
Well, that sounds good, and I just want to empower staff and the consultant after the meeting, if they determine that there's more data that is needed or other steps that they need to take, that you have that ability to do so. And I think what Jean has said sounds really good, and Terry, thanks for your comments on that. I think you have enough direction there as to move to the next.
I think we do.
Well, that's wonderful.
The key is to contact the CEO, FAA.
Yeah, that'd be great, really, if we get an ATC representative.
Yeah, and it would be nice if we could connect with the United Airlines representative or chief pilot or something. Because I think we could benefit from kind of conversations about what airlines are capable of doing. Do they tell me about the flight planning process and filing process, and can we write something in the comments section to ask the flight flow procedure or ask for an offset arrival? Those are really important key elements that would, sounds like, come from the airlines. And if we could, our United's our top.
Allison Carter, I think, has been coming to some of the meetings.
Yeah,
So
I think that
might have her contact information.
I do.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea, because everybody has spoken, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask Bert, who's our top four or five airlines? United, Delta, American?
United, Delta, SkyWest, and American.
I think that's a great idea, Kathleen, because we had
Oh, sorry, Alaska's in there too.
Alaska.
Yeah, they're up there.
United, Delta, Alaska, American.
I think Alaska and Southwest are Americans, kind of a toss-up.
So that would be very helpful. Obviously, we talked about ATC and the airlines, those are the one who decide,
Right.
So we bring the fourth parties, I think, and learn from them, what is it that making them do so.
But
we know that the ATCs sometimes it's because of safety or weather, or traffic, what have you.
But it might not be a good idea to bring the airline in and ATC at the same time. I don't think you'd want them in the same room trying to bully each other on who's making these decisions.
Yeah.
I think it might be better to separate those two at the beginning, at least.
I agree, Terry. I think
Sort of a mediation kind of thing where you wouldn't want to have them both in the same room at the same time saying it's a he said, she said.
And they're very different paths, so we want the entities to
Correct.
consider.
Correct.
Very, very disparate, so.
But that's just my opinion.
Well, and it's also different on the two procedures. Because
Got
it's stick, if you can get ATC to just say, fly the full
Fly it.
procedure,
You're done.
you're done, right? they'll have them unless there's a reason that the airline wants to, and then,
Yeah, I don't think the airline would
yeah, exactly.
care, but.
But on
Maybe
the
those
offset,
shortcuts.
that's different. I think the offset,
That's-
the
that's more the
airlines do
airline.
have a preference, and they're gonna fly their preference. Not only preference, but sometimes their insurance companies tell them they're gonna fly straight in if that's available, so.
Well, we have gone over, I appreciate your
Yes.
patience, but thank you, everyone. This was really very good meeting as usual, and I wanna take a moment to thank Bert again and your aircraft noise office for providing us the data, Gene and Jason for your analysis and your presentation, Kathleen also for setting all this up, and your presentation. The meeting was wonderful and really opened us up on the right path of discussion. And Diane, thank you again for taking care of us. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
With that, this meeting is.
And for the
Thank you.
public in the room
Public.
and out of the room.
Foster City being represented today, so thank you so much. With that, meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.